Chapter 1. I don't care if he's rich, royal, or a goddamn werewolf. I will not marry a killer. That was what Zariah Loon told her father the night she discovered she was being sold off like a porcelain doll. To Alpha Prince Caelum Volkov, heir to the deadliest Mafia bloodline in the Northern Territories. But that was before she met him. Before she saw those haunted obsidian eyes with specks of molten silver, eyes that told her he'd killed more than once, but had bled 1,000 times more. Before she realized that despite his diamond cufflinks, silk suits, and cold aristocratic glare, Caelum Volkov was not the beast in her story. She was. Because Zariah Loon had a secret, one that could ignite a war between kingdoms, one that not even she fully understood. And the only man who could protect her from the darkness was the same one she'd been forced to marry. 1 month earlier, Zariah's heels clicked too loudly against the marble floors of the Volkov estate. Everything about this place screamed old money and new blood. Massive chandeliers dripped crystals like frozen tears. The portraits on the walls stared down at her, as though already condemning her for what she was about to do. "Do you even understand what this marriage means, Miss Loon?" the elder butler drawled, as he opened the carved obsidian doors. "I understand it's not a marriage. It's a contract," Zariah replied, chin raised, fire in her amber gold eyes. The butler gave a knowing smirk. "Then may the gods help you." Inside, the Alpha Prince himself stood by the window, half-shadowed by moonlight. He didn't turn, didn't greet her, just lifted a glass of something dark and venomous. Zariah's first thought wasn't he's dangerous. It was he's heartbreakingly beautiful. Caelum Volkov was not what she expected. Sharp-jawed and stone-cold, with hair dark as midnight, and a presence that seemed to command shadows. Every inch of him screamed royalty and ruin. His voice, when he finally spoke, was as deep as a storm rolling over a battlefield. "You're late. I was deciding whether to run. And I'm here, aren't I?" He turned then slowly. His silver-ringed eyes locked onto hers like a predator scenting its prey, but there was something else there. Something almost lonely, as if he were testing her soul, not her courage. "You'll be my wife in public," Caelum said, "my problem in private, and my shield in court." Zariah narrowed her eyes. "And what will you be to me?" "A monster," he said quietly, "but the kind that protects its own." 2 weeks later, the wedding, it wasn't a wedding. It was a coronation of silence. Zariah stood in a blood-red velvet gown, ancient symbols stitched into the train, symbols of the Volkov dynasty, rulers of the north, blessed by the moon, cursed by their own power. The vows weren't spoken aloud. Instead, they pressed their wrists together, allowing a blade to kiss their skin. Blood mingled, bond sealed. The moment his blood touched hers, something awakened. Her breath caught. His pupils dilated, her vision blurred as she felt something crackle in her bones. He felt it too. What was that?" she whispered against his chest later, in the shadows of their cold wedding chamber. Caelum stared down at her like she'd struck him. "I don't know," he said, "but I felt it. You're not normal." "No, I'm not." She didn't know what she was either, just that the moon had whispered her name last night, for the first time in years. And it whispered his, too. Now, midnight in the forest, he didn't kiss her on their wedding night. He didn't touch her the way husbands were meant to. Instead, he stood guard, silent, watchful, protecting. "Why won't you come closer?" she asked one night, when they were alone in the forest, the moon glowing silver and soft above them. "Because if I do," Caelum murmured, "I won't stop at kissing you. And I wasn't made for softness, Zariah. I was made to ruin." "Maybe I want to be ruined," she breathed. He backed her against a tree, one hand caging her in. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Don't say that, little moon. You don't know what you're asking for. I do. I'm not the kind of man who loves. Then I'll teach you." And when he kissed her, it wasn't gentle, it wasn't sweet. It was desperate, as if she was the only salvation he'd ever known. Chapter 2. To be a bride in this house was not to be a woman. It was to be a pawn. But she would be a queen. Zariah woke to the scent of midnight rain and musk. Her first instinct was to reach across the bed, half expecting him to be there. He wasn't. He never was. The silk sheets were cold beside her, untouched. Like the space where Caelum Volkov slept had become symbolic of everything between them, beautiful, pristine, and unbearably distant. Except for his scent. It haunted the pillows, seeped into the velvet headboard, clung to her skin like a brand. Moonlight poured through the high-arched windows, washing the obsidian and gold room in silver-blue hues. It felt like she was still dreaming, until the knock shattered the illusion. 3 raps, then silence. Not a maid, not a servant. Caelum. She rose from the bed, barefoot, the silk of her nightgown whispering along her thighs. She opened the door, and there he stood, wearing only black slacks, his bare chest slick with sweat, hair mussed like he'd just come from battle. Or a run. Or a shift. His eyes weren't human, not tonight. They glowed faintly, wolf gold rimmed with silver fire. She said nothing. He didn't need to. I shifted, he murmured, voice gravel. I didn't mean to wake you. You didn't. She tilted her head. You ran tonight. I had to. He looked past her, into the chamber he refused to share. I needed to be out of this house. Why? His jaw clenched. Silence bloomed. Then finally, through barely parted lips, because I can smell your heat. Zariah's heart leapt. Her legs nearly buckled. You're wrong, she whispered, flustered. No, I'm not. He stepped forward, close enough that she could feel the pulse of heat rolling off him. Dangerous, magnetic, primal, his voice lowered, intimate and low. You're in preheat, Zariah. Your body's beginning to respond to the bond. You don't know what it means yet, but you're sent. Gods, your scent's driving me mad. Her cheeks flushed. She should have slammed the door, demanded space. But she didn't. Because in the depths of her soul, something unnamed ached every time she saw him like this. Unguarded, feral, real. Then come inside, she said softly. His breath hitched. No. Why? Because if I do, he said hoarsely, I won't stop. And if I take you now, I won't just mark you, Zariah. I'll mate you. Fully. Irreversibly. And whatever this is between us, whatever contract you think protects you, he shook his head, it won't. Later that morning, the Volkov estate never woke gently. At dawn, guards in charcoal suits prowled the hallways. Couriers arrived with bloodied knuckles and sealed envelopes. In the east wing, a child's violin shrieked like a siren, and in the west courtyard, where black roses grew in the shape of a crescent moon, the Alpha Prince took meetings with men who never smiled. Zariah had learned to walk the halls like a ghost. But not today. Today, she stepped into the grand dining chamber, wearing a sapphire silk dress that hugged her body like moonlight poured into mortal skin. Her hair was braided back with silver pins. Her chin was high. She sat at the long obsidian table flanked with silver cutlery and fresh blood orange juice. Caelum watched her the moment she entered. So did the others. There were 5 at the table, all men. All Volkov. She recognized them from the briefings. Alexei Volkov, Caelum's younger brother, the enforcer, all tattoos and fangs and rage. Uncle Mikhail, the elder strategist with a cane made from dragon bone. Ivan, the advisor with dead eyes and a black ledger full of death orders. And finally, Lord Demian Volkov, Caelum's father, the king of the Northern Blood Syndicate. A man said to have torn out his own alpha's heart with his teeth when he was only 17. He smiled when she sat. Not kindly, so, Demian said, voice deep and smooth as tar. This is the girl who's supposed to keep our bloodline from going extinct. Zariah's spine stiffened. I'm your son's wife, she said clearly. Not a womb to be filled. The table fell silent. And then, Caelum smirked. A flicker of pride lit his features as he sipped from his coffee. Careful, father. She bites. Demian let out a low, impressed chuckle. Well. A she-wolf with fangs. Perhaps you are worth the contract after all. She turned to Caelum. Contract. Again. He met her gaze. It's how things work here. Then break the rules. He blinked. What? You said you didn't love... That this was just a deal. But you feel it. I know you do. This thing between us. It's real. He was silent for a long time. Then rose, walked around the table, and leaned down beside her ear. I do feel something, Zariah. And that's what terrifies me most. Later that afternoon, Zariah explored the old wing of the Volkov estate's private library, desperate to make sense of the heat burning under her skin. She traced her fingers over ancient scrolls, glyphs in ink made from dried wolf blood, sigils of old moon priestesses, journals from royal brides who had once stood where she stood now, on the edge of a love that could become ruin. Then she found it, a journal bound in lunar leather, pages lined with gold, and a name carved into the first page, Celine Loon. Her mother's name. Her hands shook. She hadn't seen her mother since she was 5, had believed her dead. But the journal said otherwise. Inside were stories of a forbidden mating bond, of a love that crossed territories and bloodlines, of a war that had started with a bride who refused to obey. Her mother had once stood here too, and had fallen in love with a Volkov. Chapter 3. She was supposed to be a contract, a convenience. But the moment she looked at him like he was more than a monster, he wanted to burn down the world for her. Midnight there was a certain kind of silence that lived only in places like the Volkov solarium. It wasn't peaceful, it was watchful. Zariah sat alone beneath the arched glass ceiling, where moonlight streamed like liquid silver through the fog. The walls were covered in winter roses, white and thorny, fed with crushed gemstones and wolf ash. The Volkov roses, she'd learned, only bloomed for bonded alphas. And yet tonight, they were blooming for her. She didn't understand why. She'd never been bitten, never been marked, never been mated. And still, the roses glowed like they recognized her. She pressed her palm against the glass window beside her. Beyond it, she saw the silhouette of Caelum in the courtyard below, shirtless again, pacing, restless, as though the beast inside him had no place to breathe indoors. The journal she'd found in the hidden library sat in her lap. The last page her mother had written in was dated nearly 20 years ago, ink smeared with what looked like blood. They'll kill him if they find out. They won't understand that a loon girl can be more than prey, that we are moonborn too, that we are daughters of the first shift. Zariah, if you find this, never let them cage you, and never let a Volkov love you unless he's willing to burn for it. Zariah closed the book. She didn't know what she hated more, how her mother had disappeared, or the fact that even in her warnings, she'd known the Volkov men had the power to make women like her burn. And tonight, she was starting to ignite. Downstairs, the courtyard of broken oaths, Caelum didn't hear her footsteps at first. He was too caught up in the war beneath his skin. The shift was coming again. Uninvited, his wolf was pacing just beneath the surface, claws scratching at his chest, growling every time he caught her scent on the air. She was heat-sweet now, not fully in estrus, not yet, but it was blooming, whispering, tempting. He shouldn't be near her. He should be in the woods, where the air didn't taste like her pulse. But when she called his name softly from behind, Caelum, the sound was like a spell. His shoulders stiffened, his fists clenched, and he turned. She stood in the archway, barefoot, her nightgown fluttering around her like smoke. "You shouldn't be here," he growled. "I couldn't sleep. That's not my problem." Her eyes narrowed slightly, and she walked toward him. "No, but I am your problem. Or didn't you read the contract?" Caelum's jaw twitched. Don't what? Remind you that I'm your wife?" she asked, stopping just inches from him. "Or remind you that your scent is driving me mad too?" That made him freeze. "You're feeling it?" he asked lowly. "Yes." He ran a hand through his hair. "Shit." Zariah's heart thundered in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. "You said if you kissed me, you'd mark me. I said if I touched you now, I wouldn't be able to stop." "Then don't stop," she whispered. "Just this once. Don't stop." Something inside him snapped. He reached for her, not roughly, but with the force of something repressed for far too long. His hands framed her face, his breath a storm against her lips. "I shouldn't want you," he whispered. "But gods, I do. I want you so badly I can't see straight. Then show me." He kissed her. And it wasn't the kiss of a cold prince or a ruthless alpha. It was the kiss of a starving man. Desperate, raw, unfiltered. His lips crushed hers like he was trying to memorize her taste, as though he feared this was the last time. His hand slid into her hair, tugging slightly, tilting her head to deepen the kiss. Zariah moaned softly against him, clutching the muscles of his bare back. She could feel the wolf in him barely contained beneath his skin, shuddering, pulsing. Her own body betrayed her, pressing closer, heat pooling low in her belly. The moon above them pulsed bright through the glass ceiling, like it was watching, like it was blessing them. Caelum suddenly tore himself back, chest heaving. "We can't," he gasped. "Not yet." Zariah's eyes were glassy with desire. "Why?" "Because if I claim you before I know what's inside you, before I know what you are." He shook his head. "You'll never be free of me. I'll bind you, forever. And if you hate me for it, I'll never survive it." Zariah blinked. You care? He looked at her like she was the first thing he'd ever truly seen. Yes, he said, voice ragged. And that's the problem. Later that night Zariah didn't sleep. Instead, she returned to the journal, read it over again. Over and over. The words began to reveal a pattern. There was something about the Loon bloodline, about their link to the first moon priestesses, women who were never supposed to be bitten because their bodies could awaken shifter powers dormant in bloodlines like the Volkovs. That's what Caelum's father feared, that she could awaken something in Caelum he couldn't control. Zariah stared at the final passage. Your mate will be the wolf who calls you Moonfire, who fears his own touch more than death. But don't be afraid of him. Be afraid of the ones who want to silence your fire. She whispered aloud, Moonfire. The moment the word left her lips, her fingertips began to glow, just faintly. A shimmer of silver-gold light sparked from her skin like a match flaring to life. She gasped and yanked her hand back, but it was still glowing. Her mother had been right. She wasn't just a bride. She was a key. Meanwhile, Caelum stood under a freezing shower, eyes squeezed shut, heart slamming against his ribs. He could still taste her lips, her skin, the warmth of her breath in his mouth. He wanted her, gods, he wanted her like a curse. But it was more than lust. When he kissed her, his wolf had knelt, not in submission, in reverence. It had never happened before, and that terrified him. Chapter 4. It wasn't the mating heat that scared her. It was the way he looked at her like she was the first and last star in his sky, and how she'd begun to wish she was. The day before the blood moon, the Volkov estate did not prepare for the blood moon with rituals or feasts. It prepared with weapons. Steel was polished, doors were locked, secret passageways sealed, and the guards doubled along the eastern ridge. The staff moved in hushed tones, eyes cast down. Even the wind seemed afraid to pass through the halls, and in the very heart of it all was Caelum, locked in his private training chamber, shirtless, panting, fists bloodied. The air smelled of sweat, steel, and the subtle warning scent of a wolf alpha on the verge of a shift. He couldn't calm himself. Not with training, not with cold showers, not with a bottle of black whiskey from his father's private reserve. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her. Zariah. Her scent clung to him like an echo. Her breath was still on his skin. Her lips had seared his memory. And when she whispered his name like that, he punched the steel dummy again, hard enough that the metal bent inward. He had never lost control before, not even as a teen, not even during his first full transformation. But now, with her in this house, this close to him, his control was beginning to crack, and the blood moon hadn't even risen yet. Zariah's room, the glow beneath her skin. Zariah lay in bed, staring at the veins beneath her wrist. They shimmered now, like silver threads pulsing with an inner rhythm. Her fingers still glowed faintly when she said the word Moonfire under her breath. She wasn't imagining it. Something was waking up inside her. The journal had said her mother carried the same spark. And if her mother's warnings were right, that meant someone in this house, maybe Caelum's father, or worse, someone inside the syndicate, knew. The journal hinted at rituals, ancient ceremonies, that if the Moonfire inside her bonded with the blood of a dominant alpha, it could do more than awaken old powers. It could reshape lineage. The implications made her stomach. And yet, when she thought about Caelum, standing shirtless beneath the moonlight with his jaw clenched and his control slipping, when she remembered the heat in his kiss, the trembling restraint in his voice when he whispered that he wanted her, she couldn't pretend anymore. She didn't just want answers, she wanted him, not because of the bond, not because of the contract, because in the rare, fleeting moments when he let her see past the armor, she saw someone wounded, protective, loyal in a way no man had ever been with her before, and she wanted to know what it would feel like, to be his. Completely. Nightfall. It was almost midnight when the house shifted, not physically, but energetically. The staff had disappeared, the halls had gone silent, the air itself grew thick, charged with something invisible yet unmistakably primal, and outside, the full blood moon rose like a scarlet eye, bleeding across the sky. Zariah stepped onto the third-floor terrace, barefoot, in a sheer silk robe that clung to her like moonlight. Her heart thundered in her chest as the wind caught strands of her hair. She clutched the railing and looked toward the forest below, where she felt him. Not just knew. Felt. Caelum was there, and he was burning. Caelum tore through the woods, faster than his guards could follow, faster than his own logic could reason with. His wolf was shifting beneath his skin, hot, clawed, feral. Not just because of the blood moon. Because of her, the bond had awakened. And the moon, damn her, was feeding it. He stopped at the edge of the northern cliff, chest heaving, eyes flickering between gold and silver, claws breaking through the skin of his fingers. The transformation was incomplete, held back only by sheer will. "She's not ready," he growled to the sky. "She's not mine." But the wolf inside him snarled. "She is." His heat was rising now, unbearably. It wasn't just lust. It was a biological, metaphysical pull. A call to mate. To mark. To claim. He gritted his teeth and slammed his fist into the earth, and then he felt her, behind him. Walking through the trees, his head snapped up, eyes wide. She should not be here. Zariah walked toward him with trembling hands and fire in her chest. She didn't know what possessed her to come, just that she had to. She found him crouched on one knee beneath the bleeding moon, his body halfway shifted, muscles tense, eyes glowing. His claws were out, his canines sharp. But she wasn't afraid. She dropped to her knees in front of him and whispered, "Caelum." His head bowed, his whole frame shook. "You need to leave," he rasped. I can't control it." "I don't want you to control it," she said, voice steady. "I want you to choose." He looked up, their eyes locked, and then she reached forward and touched his cheek. It was a simple gesture, but it was enough. The wolf inside him stilled, his transformation halted, the fire cooled, and for a moment, the world stopped spinning. Then, without another word, Caelum pulled her into his arms, crushing her body to his, burying his face in her neck. His breath was ragged, his hands shook, but he held her like a lifeline. "You calm me," he whispered hoarsely. "You're the only thing that does." She leaned back slightly and cupped his face. "I want you to kiss me again," she whispered. "But not because of the heat, not because of the moon. Kiss me because you want to." His eyes softened, and he did. This kiss was different. No desperation, no claws, just warmth, reverence. The quiet surrender of a man who had never believed he could fall in love, and now was falling faster than he could stop. And this time, when their lips parted, and her breath trembled against his mouth, his fangs grazed her throat, not biting, just tasting, wanting, promising. Chapter 5, he kissed her like she was already his. She kissed him back like she was ready to be. Just before dawn, and Zariah's robe was damp from dew. Her knees ached from kneeling on forest soil. But she hadn't moved, not since Caelum's lips left hers. They sat now, side by side in silence. Her body still thrummed with electricity, not just from the kiss, but from something deeper. A resonance, pulsing between them like a silent heartbeat. His hand rested loosely over hers, but even that small touch was enough to send sparks crawling up her wrist. He hadn't spoken since, not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't trust himself to. His breath was still uneven. His wolf, though stilled, still paced beneath his skin. But this time, it wasn't asking to dominate, it was asking to protect. She turned to look at him, her voice soft, questioning. "Why haven't you marked me yet?" His fingers flexed against hers. "Because once I do," he murmured, "it's forever." She looked down, lashes brushing her cheeks. "And you're afraid of forever." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, with more honesty than she'd ever heard from him, he said, "I'm afraid I'll hurt you." Her heart clenched. "Why?" she asked. He met her gaze then, eyes silver with truth. "Because every woman who's gotten too close to a Volkov dies before she learns what we really are." Hours later, by the time they returned to the estate, the sun was rising in streaks of lavender and gold. The world looked softer than it felt, because the moment Zariah stepped back inside the gates, she felt it, suspicion. Guards looked at her longer than usual. Whispers followed her through the hallways. And when she passed the east wing, she caught a voice, raspy and cruel. "Uncle Mikhail." She shouldn't have been in the woods. She shouldn't have calmed him down. That girl isn't just a mate, she's something else. Zariah stiffened. "Do you think the Alpha knows?" Came another voice, Ivan the advisor. "Caelum's a fool when it comes to her. Blinded, That bloodline she carries, Loon, it's not just political, it's mythic. A pause. If she mates with him, we'll lose control of the Volkov heir entirely. The door creaked and she fled before they saw her, but her mind was already racing. They knew. Or they suspected. She wasn't just some pretty contract bride. She was the descendant of the moon's first daughters, and if she fully awakened, she could alter the entire balance of alpha power in the Northern Syndicate. Meanwhile, Caelum in the war room. Caelum stood over a war table littered with maps, black folders, and coded scrolls. His father, Demian, was across from him, arms folded, face unreadable. "She's dangerous," Demian said simply. "She's my wife. She's a variable. She's not a threat. You don't know that." "I feel that," Caelum said sharply. "And that's more than I can say for any of your bloody assassins and traitors." Demian's eyes narrowed. She calmed, "Your heat." Caelum didn't flinch. "Yes. No mate has ever done that before. She's not just a mate." "No," Demian said. "She's a key. And the door she unlocks could bring every royal bloodline to its knees. That includes ours." Caelum's fists clenched. "I won't let you use her." His father smiled then, sharp and cold. "You won't have a choice once your wolf claims her. That's the thing about bonds, my son. They don't ask for your permission." That night, Zariah stood before the mirror in her chamber, unwrapping the silk robe from her body. The mark Caelum had not made still haunted her neck. Her skin tingled there, as if her body wanted his teeth, wanted his claim. She didn't know what scared her more, that she wanted it too, or that some part of her was beginning to believe she needed it. The mirror fogged slightly, though the air was cold. Her breath hitched. She touched the glass. A shimmer of silver bloomed beneath her fingertips, a symbol etching itself onto the surface without her consent. A crescent moon, encircled by flames. She jerked back. The symbol vanished, just like that. Down the hall, Caelum's room, he was pacing again. It was becoming a habit now, a ritual of avoidance. If he didn't sit, didn't breathe, didn't think, maybe the bond wouldn't consume him, but it already was. He could feel her every time she moved, could sense her mood shifts like shadows across his mind. When she was afraid, his chest ached. When she was angry, his blood simmered. When she was curious, his wolf leaned forward like it wanted to explain everything to her. And when she wanted him, he burned. Suddenly, the door burst open. Zariah stood in the doorway, wrapped in a loose robe, eyes wild. "We need to talk." He stilled. "Now?" "Yes." He stepped toward her, slow, deliberate. "You're glowing again," he said quietly, eyes flicking to the faint shimmer along her collarbone. "I saw a symbol," she whispered. "In the mirror. A moon surrounded by fire." He froze. He knew that symbol. It belonged to a bloodline long thought extinct. The bloodfire loons? Women whose mating bonds didn't just link hearts, they amplified power, doubled a shifter's strength, opened dormant alpha genes, and sometimes drove the males they bonded with into madness if the bond was denied too long. "Zariah," he rasped, "you need to listen to me very carefully." She stepped closer. "No, you listen." Her hands found his chest. "You keep warning me that if you mark me you'll lose control, that the bond will take over, that you'll ruin me." Her voice trembled, but not from fear. "But I'm already falling for you, Caelum, with every kiss, every touch, every time you hold back when you could dominate. That isn't ruin, that's love." He stared at her, stunned, unmoving. "And I want you to stop holding back." His breath caught. "Say it again." "I want you," she said, lifting her chin. "All of you." His wolf surged. So did he. He crashed into her like a storm, kissing her so deeply she forgot her name. His arms wrapped around her, hoisting her up, her legs wrapping around his waist instinctively. He slammed the door shut with his foot, backing her against it, growling low in his throat. Clothes fell, breaths caught. Their bond screamed in their blood, and just when he lowered his mouth to the curve of her neck, fangs grazing skin, a knock shattered the moment, urgent, cold, unforgiving. "My prince," came Ivan's voice from beyond the door. "Your uncle's been attacked. The syndicate suspects a betrayal." Caelum's forehead fell against hers, panting. "I will finish this," he growled, "and then I'm coming back for you." And with a final kiss, rough, possessive, promising, he left, but not before she whispered after him, "I'm already yours." Chapter 6. There are vows whispered at altars, and there are vows carved into the soul. He hadn't made the first one, but the second. He'd already bled for midnight, the Volkov East Wing. The scent of blood was sharp and metallic in the air. It lingered in the carved wood panels of the East Wing and clung to the iron chandelier like a warning. Caelum stepped over the shattered glass and past 2 unconscious guards. Ivan trailed him, eyes grim. Uncle Mikhail lay on a chaise, his cane snapped in half beside him, a long gash across his rib cage. The healer, a timid Omega boy from the southern provinces, was working silently, magic glowing faint under his hands. "Who did this?" Caelum asked. Mikhail groaned, didn't see his face, but his claws, not Volkov. He was marked. Caelum's eyes narrowed. Marked how? Mikhail reached into his coat and pulled out a fragment of torn fabric, black velvet with a silver emblem stitched in the center. A wolf's head, encircled by a crescent crown. Caelum felt his stomach sink. No. Ivan frowned. "You know this sigil?" "Too well," Caelum said darkly. "It's the royal house of the Ashbane Pact." Mikhail's fingers curled into a fist. Then the rumors were true. They've been watching, waiting, and now they know about her. Caelum turned on his heel. "Where's Zariah?" Meanwhile, Zariah's room. Zariah couldn't sleep. The air crackled around her like stormlight, and her skin burned where Caelum had touched her, kissed her, whispered he'd come back for her. But he hadn't. She wasn't angry. She understood the pull of duty, of war, of blood and rank. But her heart twisted all the same. She wandered to the window, her robe falling loosely around her shoulders. The moon above was a gentle sliver now, soft and quiet, but it watched her like a witness, and when she whispered moonfire, the silver glow on her fingertips now spread up her arm. Faster, hotter. It wasn't painful, but it wasn't comforting either. It felt like something was waking up. Suddenly, she heard movement. Not outside. Inside. She turned and froze. A man stood in her doorway. Not Caelum. Not Ivan. Not any of the guards she'd come to recognize. He was tall, elegant, predatory. His cloak shimmered like crushed shadows, and his hair was a storm of silver black. His eyes, ice blue, too cold to be kind, locked onto hers. He smiled, and it wasn't pleasant. "You don't know me," he said, "but you should. I've been promised you since the day you were born." She backed away. "Who the hell are you?" He stepped closer. "I am Prince Valen of the Ashbane Pact, the true heir to the Eastern Dominion. And you, Zariah Loon, were meant to be my bride." She didn't blink, didn't flinch, even though her heart was trying to claw its way out of her chest. "I belong to no one," she said. He tilted his head. "Not even to Volkov? That was a contract, and contracts can be broken." His voice dipped, serpentine and knowing. "But what you carry in your veins, that's more than politics, that's power, the kind that can either awaken a prince." He took a slow step forward, or kill one. Zariah reached behind her subtly, fingers finding the dagger Caelum had left beneath her pillow the night before. She wrapped her hand around the hilt. "You should leave. You haven't even heard my offer yet. I don't need to." Then, "Touch her again," came a growl from the doorway, "and I'll rip your fucking throat out." Valen turned casually. Caelum stood there, half-shifted, shirt torn, eyes glowing. Not just golden now, but silver and black threaded with crimson. His claws had emerged, his teeth bared. Zariah exhaled sharply. Relief, heat, and something like awe filled her chest. Caelum didn't wait. He launched. In a flash, the 2 alpha heirs collided, fangs snapping, claws sparking as they clashed in a blur of power and primal rage. They crashed through the side wall of her chamber, out onto the marble hallway. Zariah ran after them, heart racing. The 2 wolves battled like gods. Caelum's attacks were precise, lethal, furious. Valen's were faster, more slippery, laced with mocking grace. "You've gotten soft, Volkov," Valen spat, dodging a swipe to his throat. "Falling for your little contract bride?" Caelum snarled, fangs bared. "You think this is just a contract? She's mine." Then, he tackled Valen into a pillar, claws slashing across his chest, deep enough to draw blood. "Silver blood," Valen hissed. Caelum pressed his forearm against the prince's throat. "This is your last warning. Touch her again and you'll die screaming." Valen laughed breathlessly, even as blood dripped from his mouth. But she's glowing, Volkov. She's awakening. And soon, you won't be able to stop what's coming, none of you will. With a final flash of his eyes, Valen twisted, shifted into smoke, and vanished, just like that. Caelum remained frozen for a moment, breathing hard. Then he turned. Zariah was still there, watching him, breathless. I told you I'd come back, he whispered. She nodded, voice tight. You did. He stepped closer, and then he dropped to one knee in front of her, not out of weakness, but reverence. His hand wrapped around her wrist, the one glowing faintly still, and he pressed his forehead to her palm. I vow to protect you. Not because you're my bride, not because you're powerful, but because I love you. Her breath caught, her knees buckled, and she knelt too. I love you, Caelum Volkov, she whispered. Even if the world burns for it, and with the blood moon gone and the contract forgotten, the wolf finally kissed the fire that was his mate, not out of lust, but out of love. Real, wild, eternal. Chapter 7. Mating wasn't just skin and scent, it was soul and flame, and tonight the moon would bear witness to a bond that could unmake empires, or build something no alpha bloodline had ever dared dream of. The morning after Zariah awoke wrapped in silk and moonlight, her body curved around the lingering heat of where Caelum had been. The sheets were tangled, her robe discarded somewhere in the room, and the air was heavy with the scent of him, spice and pine, musk and need. But he was gone. Only the faint echo of his kiss remained, pressed against her pulse point like a ghost. She sat up slowly, arms curled around her knees. Last night had changed something between them. Not just the way he'd fought for her, not just the way he dropped to his knees like she was more than a contract bride, but the vow. He'd said it, out loud, in the presence of the moon, and in shifter tradition, a vow made under lunar light was binding, even more than a mark. Zariah touched her neck. Still no bite, still unmarked, but every inch of her skin felt claimed, branded by the heat of his eyes, the reverence in his voice, the way his fingers trembled when he said her name like it meant something sacred. She wasn't just a piece on his chessboard anymore. She was his queen, and she could feel the world beginning to turn because of it. Elsewhere, the Volkov crypt's Caelum stood before his mother's grave. The crypts beneath the Volkov estate were ancient, walls carved with sigils and battle runes, air thick with salt and memory. He hadn't visited in years, not since he first shifted, not since he first lost control. But today, he needed guidance, a sign, a reckoning. His fingers brushed the engraved stone. Lady Valeska Volkov, beloved alpha consort, she who walked with wolves and ruled them gently. He had her eyes, people always said, but Zariah had her fire. I've found her, he whispered, and she's not what I was told to want, she's more. She burns. His voice cracked. I'm scared, Mother, scared I'll destroy her before I can protect her. But if I don't complete the bond soon, if I don't mark her, she'll burn from the inside out. She's not just a mate, she's moonfire. The stone was silent, but deep within the crypts the candles flickered. Then, every flame went out, and one relit. Blue, a blessing. Or a warning, he didn't know, but his path was clear now. He would claim her. Tonight. Later that day, Zariah sat in the hidden wing of the library again, her fingertips glowing softly as she turned the pages of the Scroll of Elders. The parchment was older than most languages, written in blood-rune script only Moonfire descendants could read. And now, she could. If a Moonfire maiden awakens fully, her blood will echo across bloodlines. Every alpha in her presence will feel the call, but only the one fated to her may survive the bond without madness. The others will fall. Zariah's breath caught. This wasn't just legend, this was prophecy. And suddenly she understood why the Ashbane prince had tried to take her, why Volkov had sealed her in contracts, married her without affection, watched her with eyes full of hunger he refused to act on. Because if she chose the wrong alpha, he could die. Or worse, she could. The Volkov estate's northern garden was forbidden after sunset. It was said the sacred pool at its center, fed by underground moonwater, was a site where the first Volkov alpha had claimed his omega under a lunar eclipse. No one had entered in centuries, until now. Caelum waited for her there, standing barefoot beneath the silver trees, the sky above turning dusky lavender. His shirt was unbuttoned, chest bare, scars from training and war on full display. But he was calm now, focused, because he knew what had to be done. Zariah stepped into the garden, hair loose, dressed in nothing but a sheer silver gown that clung to her curves like moonlight poured into flesh. Her skin shimmered faintly, her eyes glowing from within. She was awakening. They didn't speak. Words were dust between them now. Caelum crossed the space between them and reached for her hand. "If I mark you tonight, there's no turning back." "I don't want to turn back. You'll be bound to me. My wolf will be in your blood. You'll feel me in every breath. I already do." He swallowed. "Zariah?" She touched his chest. "Claim me." They entered the sacred pool slowly, the water glowing faintly with silver light. The moment her skin touched the surface, it shimmered brighter, responding to her blood. He stood behind her, arms wrapping around her waist. "I've never done this," he whispered. She smiled faintly. "Then we'll learn together." He turned her around, cupping her face, and then he kissed her. Not like the ones before. This was slow, soul deep, a promise made with lips and tongue and teeth. She moaned softly, fingers sliding into his hair, pulling him closer. He kissed down her throat, her collarbone, her shoulder, everywhere but the spot he needed to mark. And then, when her head tilted back, baring her neck, he bit. His fangs sank in, gently, painfully, perfectly. Zariah gasped, light exploding behind her eyes. Her body arched, and then her power detonated. A pulse of silver and gold burst from her skin, rippling across the pool in a wave of blinding energy. The water turned molten, the sky, and Caelum roared, his wolf fully awakened, power surging through his veins like fire. The bond locked into place. He held her through it all, until she collapsed against his chest, trembling, panting, marked, claimed, loved. The garden was silent again. Only the stars bore witness. Caelum cradled her in the pool, his fingers trailing up and down her spine as she came down from the high of the bonding. "Are you okay?" he whispered. She nodded against his chest. "I feel like I'm made of lightning." He smiled, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "You are..." And for the first time since their marriage, since their first touch, since the contract that had once felt like a chain, they didn't feel like strangers. They felt like fate. Chapter 8. They thought she'd be his weakness. Instead, she became the fire that would burn the entire kingdom into something new. Dawn, the day after the claiming, the moment the sun broke over the horizon. The bond settled. Zariah stirred beneath silk sheets in Caelum's bed, her body still humming with heat, the mark on her neck a faint silver imprint that pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. Her limbs felt heavy, her skin oversensitized. Alive, she could feel him even before she opened her eyes, not just his presence beside her, but his thoughts, his rage, held at bay like a storm behind a dam, his protectiveness sharp and sacred. His desire for her still, yes, but now layered beneath something deeper. A vow so intense it could only belong to a wolf whose soul had fused with hers. Her lips parted slightly. "You're not sleeping." "No," Caelum said quietly from beside her, voice hoarse from lack of rest. "Not with a threat already rising outside our gates." She turned to face him. He sat propped against the carved headboard, bare-chested, eyes shadowed. His claws were retracted, but his muscles coiled beneath the skin, tension in every inch of his frame. Zariah reached for his hand, interlacing her fingers with his. "Tell me." He looked at her for a long moment before answering. 3 Alpha Courts have sent emissaries. By Raven. This morning, one of them came from the High Circle itself. Zariah's blood ran cold. "What do they want?" "You." His jaw flexed. "They know you've awakened. They know we bonded. They want a summit called, immediately." She swallowed. "Because of the moonfire?" "No." He leaned in, eyes burning gold. "Because of what your moonfire does to me." She blinked. "What are you talking about?" Caelum exhaled, voice low and sharp. "I didn't just shift last night, Zariah, I ascended." Her heart stopped. "Ascended? It's a state only ancient wolves reach, only a few in every century. My wolf changed, became something older, bigger, stronger." He stared at her, reverent and rattled. "And it happened because of you." 3 hours later, the Volkov estate's inner sanctum was filled with scent-marked power. 6 elders from the Volkov bloodline, 2 advisors from the High Court, and Caelum, standing at the head of the obsidian table, his hand resting on the dagger of bloodline authority. Zariah stood to his left, not behind him, beside him. It made them nervous. One of the High Court emissaries, a tall, wolf-eyed man with a voice like steel, spoke first. The union between Alpha Caelum and the Loon Girl was unauthorized. "She's my wife," Caelum said coldly. "By contract, not by mating." "That has changed." Murmurs. The elder Volkovs exchanged glances. One of them, a bitter old man with a scar down the side of his face, cleared his throat. The claiming took place under a sacred moon, in ancestral territory, without witness. "You expect us to believe?" Zariah's voice cut across the table. Clear, steady. "Your moonfire relics burned in my hands last night. The sacred pool boiled, and the trees of the northern garden bloomed, off-cycle." Everyone went quiet. One of the female advisors, lean and silver-haired, narrowed her eyes. "You're saying the bond awakened the land?" "I'm not saying anything," Zariah said. "The forest is." Caelum lifted his chin. "She's my true mate, fated. And now that the bond has sealed, the moonfire is no longer legend, it's lineage, and I won't let her be treated like a threat." Silence again, then the emissary from Ashbane, the same pack as Valen, rose. "Then prepare your armies, Volkov," he said, "because if the moonfire remains in your court, the others will come for her." That night a blood-red war map was stretched across the center of the command tent in the lower estate. Red wolf pieces for Volkov soldiers, gold for High Court, black for Ashbane. Zariah stood quietly at the edge while Caelum, Ivan, and 2 war strategists discussed border threats. But her mind was elsewhere, because beneath the scent of smoke and steel, she smelled magic. Old magic, moon magic. It was coming from the map itself. She stepped forward, placing her fingertips on the corner of the Ashbane region, and the piece beneath her fingers glowed silver, then shattered. Everyone went still. "What the hell?" One strategist breathed. Zariah looked up. "Their forces are already moving." Caelum stared. "How do you know?" "Because the bond gave me access to your bloodline's territory grid, your wolves, your wards. I feel them now." She swallowed. "They're being broken. As we speak." The realization dawned heavy. Zariah was now more than a mate. She was a tactical asset, and a psychic link to the Volkov's entire defense net. Caelum stepped beside her, voice dark with awe. "You can see all that?" She looked up at him. "I can see more." Flashback, the moon's memory that night, as she slept in Caelum's bed again. The mark on her neck flared with moonlight, and she dreamed. Not of her own life, but of a woman from generations ago. Dark hair, a silver crown of feathers, standing atop a battlefield with her alpha mate at her side. Magic burning from her palms, enemy armies kneeling before her not out of fear, but surrender. A moonfire queen. Zariah woke with tears on her cheeks, and a new truth in her bones. She wasn't just a wife, she was a weapon. And tomorrow she would have to choose, become what she was born to be, or watch the man she loved fall to protect her. Chapter 9, he gave her his name, his power, his blood. But the crown? She forged that with fire and fury, and wore it like she'd been born to burn. The estate was no longer quiet, not even in the morning. The Volkovs, once a family of private warfare and controlled bloodshed, were now preparing for something unprecedented, a bonded alpha heir with an awakened moonfire mate. Caelum stood over the reinforced war map, eyes sharp, veins rigid beneath his skin. His wolf was restless, prowling beneath his flesh. Zariah stood at his side, cloaked in silver and navy battle robes tailored for her overnight. She hadn't asked for them, but someone, perhaps Ivan or even the seamstress Omega, had known instinctively. She was no longer the bride, she was the queen. And tonight, she would lead. Scouts returned just before sunrise, Ivan reported, unfurling a scroll. Valen crossed the Tethran River 3 hours ago. He's headed directly for the border. With how many? Caelum asked. Ivan hesitated. Zariah closed her eyes and felt it. The rhythm of the earth, the howling through the trees. She didn't hear it with ears. She heard it in her blood. 3 legions, she said quietly. Ashbane has gathered the Shadow Claws, the Black Fangs, and their royal guard. They've abandoned subterfuge. They want to make an example. Ivan blinked. That's correct. Everyone turned to her. Zariah opened her eyes, silver glowing behind her irises. "I told you," Caelum said, sliding a protective arm around her waist. "The bond changed her. She's not just a link, she's a compass." One of the advisors narrowed his eyes. "And what happens if you fall in battle, Caelum? If the bond is severed, does her power vanish?" Zariah answered for herself. "No," she said. "I'm not just Moonfire because of him. The bond unlocked it, yes, but it doesn't sustain it." She stepped forward. "And if you want proof, I'll give it to you." The sacred brazier in the Volkov court had not been lit in over a century. It stood in the central courtyard, surrounded by white stone wolves and the carved totems of the old gods. Only alpha queens, bloodmates, not contract consorts, were permitted to light it. But Zariah stepped to the flame with her head held high. She bent over the cold ashes and whispered only a single word, Ignis Lunaris. And the fire erupted. White-hot silver blue, the flames soared 10 feet into the air, blinding, roaring, alive. The brazier's base cracked from the heat. The carvings along the rim glowed. The totems bowed inward. The wolves howled, and the court fell silent. The flame did not consume her. It obeyed her. She turned slowly, her voice clear and full of quiet authority. "Whether you trust me or not, this is happening. I will not wait for your permission to protect what is mine." Caelum's chest expanded with a breath so full it nearly cracked his ribs. He had seen beautiful things in this world, but nothing like this. Nothing like her. Later, the royal bedroom. Just before dusk, their chambers were quieter now, their time limited. But the way Caelum looked at her as she removed the battle robe, slowly, intimately, made Zariah forget the war for a moment. "You lit the sacred fire," he murmured, stepping behind her. "Do you know how many queens have died trying to do that?" "I didn't try," she whispered. "I remembered." He stilled. She turned to him. "I saw her again, in a dream last night. The first Moonfire queen. Her name was Zariah. She fought beside her mate when the high courts tried to erase their bond. And when he fell, she kept fighting." Caelum's eyes darkened. She wore armor made from his bones, and she destroyed the Ashbane line once before. His breath caught. Zariah stepped closer. "Do you understand now, Caelum? This isn't just about you, or me, or even this war. This bond, this blood. It's a return." He brushed a curl behind her ear and dropped to his knees again. Not for submission, but reverence. He kissed her mark, then the curve of her belly, then her hand. And when he rose again, they kissed like wolves before battle. The battlefield lay just beyond the Tethran border. 3 full Ashbane legions, black armor, silver claw crests, war drums pounding like thunder in the belly of the earth. Caelum stood at the front, armored, fangs bared, surrounded by his fiercest wolves. Tyrell, commander of the 3rd Claw. Nira, his childhood packmate, and 4 Volkov heirs from distant lines, all united under the Crescent Blood banner. But when Zariah stepped onto the field, every soldier turned. She wore silver robes over leather armor. No crown, no weapon, only the flames in her palms, and the alpha mark glowing on her neck. She walked to Caelum and stood beside him, as equals. "I'll protect your left," she said. He nodded. "I'll guard your heart." They looked at each other one last time, then turned to face the enemy. And when Vaylin stepped forward from the Ashbane line, eyes gleaming and cruel, he didn't look at Caelum. He looked at her. "You should have chosen me," he called. Zariah lifted her chin. "I didn't choose anyone." Her palms caught fire. "I remembered who I am." The battle erupted like a storm swallowing the sky. Claws against steel, teeth against bone, power against blood. Zariah moved like windfire through the fray, burning enemy wards, shielding Volkov soldiers with spectral light, sending entire phalanxes flying with a single burst of power. Caelum tore through Ashbane wolves like a god of war, feral, focused, frightening. At one point he was surrounded, and Zariah's screams split the night. She flung a ring of fire so wide it cleared a 30-foot radius, turning Vaylin's elite soldiers to ash, and then Vaylin appeared. Right behind her. "You don't know what you've done," Vaylin hissed, grabbing her from behind. "I do," Zariah said, summoning moonlight in both hands. "I ended you." He growled, but before he could shift, Caelum tackled him, wolf to wolf, alpha to alpha. Their fight was primal, centuries of prophecy behind every blow. Teeth tore, claws bled, bones cracked, and finally, Zariah joined them. not as a bystander, as fire incarnate. She touched Valen's chest and whispered, "Your line ends here." The fire exploded. When the battle ended, the moon was full again, and Caelum stood at its center, bloodied, victorious. Zariah stood beside him. The Ashbane army was in retreat, their prince gone. The Volkov flag was raised, but more than that, so was a second banner, white, silver, with a flame-entwined moon at its center, the sigil of the Moonfire Queen. And when Zariah stepped forward to address the court, the soldiers, and the world, she said only one thing: this kingdom does not belong to alphas alone anymore. Chapter 10. Some crowns are given, others are seized, but the rarest are born from battle, blood, and love, and those are never taken lightly. 1 week after the battle, the capital, High Court Citadel. The doors of the High Court were forged from myth, 12 feet tall, etched with sacred wolves in battle, embedded with moonstone and obsidian, enchanted so that only an alpha of pure line could open them. They had never opened for a woman before. Until now, the moment Zariah approached, dressed in flowing black robes embroidered with silver flames, the doors groaned and swung open on their own. Gasps rippled through the court. The elders rose from their thrones. The High Chancellor stood. Caelum entered behind her, his stride controlled but undeniably dominant, alpha authority dripping from every step. But he didn't walk ahead of her. He walked with her. And when they reached the platform before the great throne of unity, the Chancellor spoke in a voice both gravel and magic. "You come before the ancient court to answer a single question. Do you rule together?" The hall fell silent. The world seemed to still. Zariah turned slightly, met Caelum's eyes, their fingers intertwined. "Yes," she said, "but not as alpha and mate, as fire and fang, as will and war, as the next age." The Chancellor nodded once. "Then rise," he said, "as monarchs." The ritual chamber was older than the war itself. Stone walls carved with runes of the first shift. Silver bowls filled with sacred oils. 3 circles, moon, flame, and blood, each representing a rite. The circle of flame was Zariah's. The circle of blood was Caelum's. And between them, drawn with ash and bone, the circle of union, they stood in silence before the flames as the shaman, a pale, blind woman known only as Sister Vara, recited the ancient words. "By the will of the moon, by the truth in blood, by the bond forged not in fear but in flame, we anoint you." She lifted the sacred blade. Caelum stepped forward first. "I give my blood freely," he said, slicing his palm, not as an heir, but as a man who has chosen his equal. The blood dripped into the bowl. Zariah stepped next. "I give my fire freely," she said, summoning a lick of silver flame to her palm. "Not as prophecy, as choice." The flames danced into the bowl and ignited the blood. The room glowed with a pulse of pure energy. The shaman lifted the bowl and poured its contents into the circle of union. It sizzled as it struck the ash, and then the circle blazed to life. Runes lit up around them. The ground trembled, and suddenly, every wolf in the room dropped to their knees. Some clawed at their chests, others sobbed. Because they felt it, the mating bond between Caelum and Zariah had awakened a dormant link buried deep in the blood of the werewolf race. It wasn't just fated, it was revelatory. The first royal ball, the ballroom, glistened like something out of a dream. Chandeliers of ice-lit crystal, black marble floors veined with gold, music that flowed like water over the skin. Courtiers draped in silk and claws, but Zariah felt none of the awe she once might have. Not anymore. Now she felt watched, not admired, not desired, assessed. Beside her, Caelum wore tailored obsidian armor lined with royal velvet. His wolf paced silently beneath his skin, sensing what she did. Loyalty was thin in this room. Some bowed too low, others not at all. When Zariah caught a courtier whispering behind her fan, she didn't flinch. She walked straight to the woman, lifted her chin, and asked, "Do you have something you'd like to say to your queen?" The woman blanched. Caelum's smirk was subtle but deadly. "She's still learning how to hold back," he murmured, wrapping an arm around Zariah's waist. "Be thankful she didn't light you up." But later, in the quiet of the tower garden, Zariah's laughter turned bittersweet. Caelum turned her toward him, cupping her face. "Tell me what weighs on you." She sighed. "They'll never love me." "They don't have to," he said softly. "They'll follow you." Because power always has two options, be feared or be adored. You gave them a third, you inspired them. She looked up at him. But what if they turn on us? He kissed her brow. Then we'll burn their courts to the ground, he whispered, and build a world of our own. That night, for the first time in weeks, they made love without war hanging over them. No fear, no fire, just hands, lips, tongues, soft gasps in candlelight. Zariah lay atop him, slow and deliberate, riding him with the elegance of a goddess who knew she was worshipped. He moaned her name like it was both prayer and curse, and when he flipped her over, pinning her arms above her head with one hand, sinking into her so deeply she cried out, he whispered things he'd never said before. You're my everything, my breath, my reason. I'd burn the moon to keep you warm. Afterward, they didn't sleep, they just held each other. Tangled, twined, wolves, mates, monarchs, unbreakable. Meanwhile, in the shadows of the court, a man in crimson robes knelt before a statue in a dark temple beneath the capital. He bore no sigil, no name, only a mark on his spine, a crescent split in two. He whispered into the silence, the Moonfire Queen rises. The bloodline of Zariah returns. But so too does the one born of Eclipse, and he will come not to mate, but to consume. Chapter 11. Every prophecy needs a destroyer. But what happens when the darkness isn't evil, just abandon? 2 weeks later, Moon's Rest Valley, the winds were too quiet. Zariah stood on the edge of Moon's Rest Valley, cloaked in her ceremonial hunting leathers, staring into the stillness of a land older than time. The grass here grew silver. The trees were bare but humming. The mountain ranges in the distance sat shrouded in perpetual dusk. This was the burial site of the Moonfire bloodline, the final resting place of her ancestors, and something beneath the soil was stirring. Behind her, Caelum stood silent, his gaze focused not on the land, but on her. His presence was as steady as it had always been, and yet, lately, Zariah had felt something shift. The bond still pulsed strong between them. But it had changed, not weakened, just tested. She could sense it in the way his eyes lingered longer than usual, how his hand tensed whenever she moved too far from his side. It wasn't distrust, it was fear of what she was becoming, and what she was now being called to face. That night the Moonfire returned when she slept, not in dreams, but in visions. Zariah stood in a wasteland of ash and obsidian. Stars hung low, bleeding red. Across from her stood a figure, tall, draped in black, wearing a crown made of scorched bone. He had her eyes, but no soul behind them. He lifted his hand, and the sky split. From the rent in the stars came screaming shadows, wolves twisted by ancient curses, crawling on limbs too long and voices too familiar. And in the center of the storm, the Eclipse Prince stepped through. You carry the fire of the first queen, he said, but I was born of what she left behind. Zariah's chest ached, her hands burst into flame ready to fight, but her body wouldn't move. She was frozen in place, and then Caelum appeared behind her in the vision, not as himself, but bleeding, dying, calling her name. She screamed and woke up gasping. Back in the citadel, the scholar's wing. I need access to the sealed scrolls, Zariah told the keeper. The old woman tilted her head, one silver braid falling down her chest. Those haven't been touched since the eclipsing war. That's what I'm looking for. They speak of destruction, forbidden pairings, madness. They also speak of him. The keeper's face turned grave. You've seen him. Zariah didn't flinch. Yes, and you understand what that means? That the prophecy isn't finished. The woman stepped aside slowly and opened the iron chamber behind her. Dust and frost spilled outward. Inside, scrolls and tomes written in dead languages lined the walls. Zariah stepped through, and the iron door closed behind her. Caelum was not used to being left behind. He trusted Zariah, with his life, with his name, with his wolf. But still, he felt it. The pull of distance, not physical, but spiritual. Ever since the vision, she'd been quieter, more focused, not secretive, but withholding. And he understood why. She didn't want to worry him, she wanted to protect him, but that wasn't how the bond worked. He sat in the temple of the Alpha Moon, meditating, trying to calm the beast in him that had begun pacing constantly. His wolf sensed something approaching, something wrong. Ivan entered quietly, We intercepted a raven. Caelum stood. From whom? Not Ashbane, not High Court. He frowned. Then who? Ivan handed him the scroll. It bore a seal of black wax, and inside, in slanted ancient ink, it read, "She is not the last Moonfire. I am not your enemy. She is mine too. Deep in the scroll she found it. A name erased from most histories. Eryx, son of Zariah, the first Moonfire queen. Conceived not in union but in tragedy, born beneath a blood eclipse, cursed with the dual power of light and void, hidden, banished, lost. The prophecy had never said Zariah was the only, just the first to return, and Eryx, the eclipse prince. He was her half-brother, her blood, and possibly her undoing. Later she didn't want to keep it from Caelum. But how did you tell your mate the war wasn't over, because your long-lost brother was coming to tear down everything you'd built? She sat beneath the moonlit tree, arms wrapped around herself, until she felt Caelum behind her. He didn't speak, he just sat beside her, pulled her onto his lap, and buried his face in her neck. "I know," he whispered, her breath caught. "You do? I feel it. Through the bond, through your silence." She turned slowly. "I didn't want to burden you." "Don't do that," he said gently, but firmly. "Don't protect me from your pain. I'm not a castle for you to shield. I'm your wolf. Your mate. If we bleed together." Tears filled her eyes. She kissed him hard, and when they pulled apart she whispered, "He's my brother." Caelum was silent. Then we'll face him. Together. Chapter 12. They shared blood, but not fate. And fate, once stirred, could not be stopped. Not by love, not by oaths, not even by the moon. Dawn at the Volkov watchtower, the horizon bled red. It wasn't the usual dawn hue. This was darker, rusted, like a warning. From the highest tower of the Volkov stronghold, Zariah watched the eclipse begin, slow and unnatural. The moon hadn't been due to wane for another week, but it was changing anyway, responding. To him. To Eryx. The bond between her and Caelum still pulsed strong through her chest, grounding her, reminding her of who she was, of what she had chosen. But this wasn't a matter of choice. This was blood, bone, prophecy, and Zariah could feel the call of her brother in her veins, pulling, whispering. "Come to me, sister. Let the flame meet the void." Caelum's private war room. "This isn't a normal threat," Caelum said, pacing. Ivan, Tyrell, and General Nera watched him tensely. Zariah sat silently at the head of the war table, robed in silver, her eyes too calm, too still. "She's connected to him," Nera said softly. "Is that a weakness?" Zariah didn't answer, but Caelum growled, loud and feral. "Don't speak of her like that." Tyrell leaned forward. "She is linked to him, We need to plan with that in mind. If he's in her head, then—" "He's not," Zariah interrupted at last. "He's in my blood, yes, but not my mind. I still choose my mate. I still choose my king." Caelum's throat tightened. He reached for her hand across the table and laced their fingers together. His thumb grazed her mating mark. "I trust you," he said simply, "but I don't trust him." Zariah exhaled. "You shouldn't. He's not coming for peace. He's coming to finish what Zariah started, and what she left undone." Flashback that night. Zariah dove into another moonfire vision. She stood in a great stone hall lit by blue flames. Zariah knelt on the floor, holding 2 infants, one in each arm. One radiated light, the other shadows. The shadow child whimpered, but Zariah flinched. She set the shadowed infant down in a silver cradle, kissed his forehead, and turned away, her back trembling. Zariah cried out, but the vision didn't hear her. "Forgive me," Zariah whispered to the shadowed child. "The world is not ready for you." The doors slammed behind her, and the child's eyes opened, empty, endless. Back in the present, 2 days before Eryx's arrival, betrayal struck. A courier arrived with a scroll bearing the seal of the northern Beta houses. They refused allegiance to the Moonfire Queen. Worse, several of the Volkov Elder Council had signed it. "I should have known," Caelum growled, slamming the letter down. "They've waited for a crack in our foundation. They think she's the crack." Zariah's hands trembled. "They think I'll break," she said softly. "Then show them you bend," Caelum said, "and burn back twice as hard." But the betrayal didn't end there. That evening, a palace guard was found dead, poisoned. Another was caught trying to sneak through the west wing, with a blade coated in wolf's bane. Zariah's private rooms had been his target. Later, in their chambers, Caelum was restless, angry, protective, on edge. He paced the room like a caged beast, while Zariah watched him from the bed, arms crossed. "We should move you to the mountain citadel," he said. "It's sealed, sacred. He can't reach you there. You want me to hide. I want you safe. I am safe, when I'm by your side." He turned, fangs flashing. "Don't you get it, Zariah? You're not just my mate anymore. You're a beacon, and every cursed alpha, every broken bloodline, every traitor in this kingdom sees you as the match that could light their damn rebellion." Zariah stood, slow and proud. "I am the fire, Caelum. You knew that when you claimed me." His breath hitched. "And if the fire turns on me?" She flinched, but didn't back down. "Then it means you never truly trusted what you lit." Silence, thick, unbearable. Caelum moved closer. His voice softened, cracked. "I'm not afraid of you. I'm afraid for you. I already lost my mother to prophecy. I won't lose my mate to it too." Zariah stepped into his arms, pressing her forehead to his. "You won't lose me," she whispered. His hands shook as they gripped her waist. "You promise?" "I swear." Later, the night before the eclipse, they lay in bed, but neither slept. Zariah rested her head against his bare chest, listening to his heartbeat. It was steady, grounding, but under the rhythm, she heard something else, a second heartbeat, fainter, inside her. Her eyes went wide. She sat up slowly. "Caelum," his brows furrowed. "What is it?" She took his hand and placed it low on her abdomen. He frowned, confused, until his eyes glowed gold, until his wolf stilled, until he heard it too. A tiny fluttering beat. Life, inside her. Their life. "Zariah." His voice broke. She nodded. "I didn't know, not until just now." He pulled her into his arms, and for a moment, despite everything, they were just a man and woman. Two wolves, two souls, and one future now growing between them. At the stroke of midnight, the skies darkened fully, the moon vanished, the stars dimmed, and Eric's came. He arrived without warning. No army, no banners, just a figure cloaked in swirling mist and shadows, stepping through the northern gate barefoot, crown of bone glinting in the dying starlight. Zariah stood at the top of the citadel steps, flanked by Caelum and a full guard, but Eric's didn't look at them. He looked at her. "Hello, sister," he said softly. Zariah's breath caught. His voice sounded like hers, but hollow, echoing. "I've come to give you what our mother never did," he said, stepping forward. A choice. Chapter 13. They were born of the same bloodline. Two halves of a legend, a flame and a shadow. But even blood could not outrun choice, and love would not kneel to prophecy. Moments after midnight, Zariah's pulse thundered as she descended the steps alone. The stone beneath her bare feet was ice cold. Her long cloak of black velvet with silver flame embroidery dragged like smoke behind her, and her hair, unbound, danced in the growing wind. Behind her, Caelum stood motionless, flanked by Ivan and Tyrell. But his wolf was barely restrained. His mate, his queen, was walking into a confrontation with a brother born of shadow, a bloodline sealed away for a reason even the oldest wolves dared not name. But she had insisted. "If I am to lead Caelum, then I must face what made me." Now she walked into darkness, and the darkness met her halfway. Eric stood on the cobbled stones just outside the citadel's protective circle, tall and statuesque, skin as pale as moonstone, hair like windswept onyx. His cloak was made of feathers, not black, but the color of starlight that had died. And his crown, fashioned from jagged ancient wolf bones, seemed to hum. He looked at Zariah like a lost child, or a mirror. "Closer now," he said, his voice a strange harmony of deep male pitch and something ethereal. "Let me see her." The one mother chose. Zariah stopped 2 paces from the threshold. "She didn't choose either of us. She was afraid of us both." He tilted his head. "But she raised you. She left you in a cave." Eric's didn't flinch. "And yet, I survived." Zariah's throat tightened. "Why are you here, Eric's?" He stepped into the moonless night fully, and the air chilled around him. "To give you what I never had. To offer you the chance she denied me. The crown." Zariah narrowed her eyes. "I already have one." Eric smiled. You have a crown of flame. I offer you one of balance. Join me, Zariah. Become more than their queen. Become our legacy." Back inside, Caelum watched from the balcony above, barely breathing. She hadn't turned around, hadn't looked back, not once. Ivan leaned toward him. "Say the word, and we'll descend. End it." But Caelum shook his head. "No," she asked for trust. "So I'll give it, even if it kills me." And inside, his wolf howled, because that was love. Not the easy, soft kind, but the brutal kind, the kind that waited even while it bled. The two stood in eerie stillness as the eclipse deepened overhead. "You think I'm here to destroy you," Eric said finally, "but that's not true." Zariah's flame sparked faintly around her wrists. "Then why poison our court? Why murder the Ashbane princes? Why raise the forsaken wolves from their graves?" "Because Mother made me the weapon," he said with a sad smile, "and you." "She made the balm, the fire that soothes, the flame that binds. But what you don't know, what she never told you, is that we were never meant to be apart." Zariah's heart pounded. "What do you mean?" He reached into his cloak and removed a scroll sealed with the same sigil as Sariel's crown. She recognized it instantly. Only Moonfire heirs could touch such scrolls, and only true-blooded ones could open them. He handed it to her without a word. Zariah took it, and as her fingers touched the wax, it melted. The parchment unrolled. Her eyes scanned it, and her breath left her. "To my children, Zariah and Eric's," it began. "Born of light and born of dark, you are not meant to rule apart. One will lead the blood, the other will guard the gate, one will burn, one will break, but only together can the world be remade." Zariah's hands shook. Her voice was barely a whisper. "She knew you'd live." Eric's nodded. "She didn't fear me, she planned me." Eric stepped closer. "You don't have to lose your mate, or your kingdom, but you must open the gates, Zariah. The Eclipse realm is where the last cursed wolves wait, trapped, alone, forgotten. I can't reach them alone. You want me to release them? I want you to heal them. With me." She swallowed. "You tried to kill my mate. I tried to scare him. And I failed. He loves you so much it hurts." Her heart clenched. "He'd burn the world for you, sister. Don't make him." Zariah looked at him, her brother, a stranger in a reflection, and said the only thing she could, "I have to speak to him. First." Back in their private chambers, she found Caelum waiting in nothing but trousers, his muscles tight, eyes feral. She closed the door. And he was on her, lips crashing against hers, hands desperate, frantic. He lifted her, slammed her back against the door, growling into her mouth. "I thought I lost you," he breathed. "You didn't. I saw the scroll. I felt the bond flicker. I thought—" She kissed him hard, tugging at his belt. "You're the only one I choose. Always." They didn't make love. They claimed each other, again, on the floor, on the bed, against the cold windowpane overlooking the eclipse. Every inch of her burned, every inch of him branded, and when they collapsed in each other's arms, panting, raw, spent, he whispered, "What did you see?" She rested her head on his chest, and told him everything. The scroll, the gate, the cursed wolves, Eric's plea, and the truth of what came next. "I have to open the gate, Caelum, and if I do, I need you beside me. Not because I'm your queen, not because I'm your mate, but because I won't do it without you." He swallowed hard and nodded. "I'll stand with you, no hesitation, no conditions, only love." The next morning they stood before the sealed eclipse gate, deep beneath the citadel, in a stone hall none had walked in for 1,000 years. The gate pulsed with bone-colored runes, the air crackled with ancient magic. Zariah and Eric stood side by side. Caelum stood directly behind her, hand on her back. Her wolf surged forward, so did her fire. Eric's shadow magic responded in kind. They placed their palms on the gate and whispered, "Open." The stone screamed. The world shook, and the gate began to crack. Chapter 14. Some doors were locked for a reason, but some were never meant to stay closed, especially when what lies beyond them remembers your name. The stone beneath their feet trembled as the eclipse gate cracked down its center, slow, deliberate, like the cracking of an ancient ribcage after 1,000 years of silence. Zariah's palm burned against the runes. Caelum's hand was firmly pressed to the small of her back, grounding her. Eric stood to her left, his palm glowing with the opposite of flame, void made solid. This was more than unlocking a gate. It was unbinding a legacy. And yet, Zariah felt no fear, only a strange, magnetic pull, like destiny was no longer a future waiting ahead of her, but a wind that had finally caught her wings. Then, the gate shuddered and flung itself open. A blast of icy black gold wind roared out, nearly knocking them all off their feet. The chamber howled with voices, countless, fractured, layered cries of wolves long dead. Zariah fell to her knees. Caelum dropped beside her, wrapping his arms around her, whispering in her ear, "You're not alone. You're not alone. You're not alone." And she wasn't. Not anymore. They stepped through the gate, and the air changed. The stars above this realm were unfamiliar, clustered in constellations that twisted and bled. The ground was not dirt but obsidian dust, glowing faintly with buried embers. Wolves moved in the distance, not fully corporeal, spectral, wounded, twisted by time and rejection. They did not attack, they watched, they recognized. Zariah moved forward, head held high, fire coiled in her palms, her scent now laced with something ancient, the scent of cereal. Eric spoke softly beside her. This is where they were banished. Wolves who bore traits the old councils feared, powers they couldn't control, moonless shifters, bone callers, mind howlers, twins born under eclipses. Zariah swallowed. They weren't cursed, they were discarded. Eric's nodded. And now they wait, for someone brave enough to say they still belong. Caelum took her hand. Then let's tell them. In the heart of Eclipse Vale stood the Bone Circle, an arena of carved ivory where the forsaken wolves held council. Zariah entered first, followed by Caelum and Eric's. Thousands stood in silence. They were feral and elegant. Some were marked by mutations, horned brows, glowing spines, shifting eyes that blinked sideways. But all bore the mark of rejection, until now. Zariah stepped into the circle and raised her voice. "I am Zariah of the Moonfire line, daughter of Zariah, bonded to Caelum of House Volkov, queen not by counsel but by blood." A low murmur rolled through the crowd. "I was told to fear you, told you were monsters, that opening this gate would curse the world, but I see now." She stepped forward. "You are not curses, you are wounds, wounds that never healed." Her hands flared with silver-blue flame, not as a threat but as a beacon. "And I offer you healing, not chains, not false thrones. I offer you a return." A wolf with shattered antlers stepped forward. His voice was old and cracked. "You are your mother's flame, but will you stay, even if we burn you for it?" Caelum growled low, but Zariah lifted her chin. "Yes," she said, "because you are my flame too." That night they camped within the Eclipse realm. The wolves did not attack, but they watched. Zariah spent hours walking among them, listening, healing what she could, unsealing minds closed by centuries of silence. Caelum remained close, but silent. When she returned to him after midnight, he was sharpening his dagger beside a fire of blackwood logs. She sat beside him. "Say it," she whispered. He didn't look at her. "I'm trying. Trying not to hate him, trying not to hate this place." Zariah nodded. She understood. "It's not like home. No, it's not," Caelum said tightly, "and I don't think it ever can be." Zariah reached for his hand. He let her take it. "I don't need you to love it," she said. "I only need you to stay." He finally turned to her, eyes glowing faintly with his wolf's grief. "I'd follow you into hell, Zariah. You already have." He cupped her cheek and kissed her. Not softly, not sweetly, but desperately. Like she was the last light he could still see. While Zariah slept wrapped in Caelum's arms, Eric stood at the edge of a chasm overlooking the realm. Ivan approached him, sent by Caelum under the pretense of diplomacy. But Eric's didn't turn. "I know why you're here." Ivan crossed his arms. "You're too calm for a man opening ancient portals." Eric's voice was distant. "Because I'm not opening them, Ivan. I am one." Ivan's brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" Eric's turned at last, eyes glowing not gold like an alpha, but white. "Zariah was born of flame. I was born of shadow. But I was never just meant to be her balance." His gaze dropped to his palm, which cracked, briefly, revealing stone beneath. "I was made to contain something. A lock." Ivan paled. "A lock for what?" Eric's looked up at the sky, where the stars had begun to disappear. "Not a gate," he whispered. "A prison." Zariah woke gasping. Her abdomen clenched. Pain lanced through her mark. Caelum was instantly alert, cradling her, whispering, holding her hand. "What is it?" "I don't know," she breathed, shaking. But in her mind's eye she saw it, a figure in chains, buried beneath the eclipse veil. Waking, stretching, smiling. It was not a wolf, it was older, darker, and it knew her name. Ah, the Queen of Fire comes at last. Chapter 15. Every gate has a keeper, every keeper has a price. But when the key is blood, and the cost is fate, what do you sacrifice to stay free? The wind had changed. The cursed wolves of Eclipse Vale, once silent and spectre-like, had begun to retreat toward the mountains. Their faces were drawn tight with fear, their eyes flicking not toward Zariah, nor even Eric's, but toward the earth itself. The air felt hollow, as though something ancient was breathing just beneath the surface, sucking warmth from the soil and stars alike. Zariah felt it too. The fire within her, the moonfire Zariah had passed down, had begun flickering, not in weakness but in caution, like a flame shivering at the edge of a storm. And her wolf refused to speak. It paced inside her ribcage, silent and snarling. Even Caelum noticed. He didn't voice it. But he hadn't left her side in hours. His arm always brushed hers. His eyes never wandered from her movements. And at night, he no longer slept, just held her, his body a fortress around hers, listening for a sound he couldn't describe. He didn't know what was coming, but he knew it was for her. Eric's confession. They met at the altar of bone at the center of Eclipse Vale, the place Zariah had first sealed the gate 1,000 years ago. Eric stood there already, eyes heavy with memory. "You were right," Zariah said. "The wolves weren't the danger." "No," Eric murmured. "We were." She waited, and slowly he turned to face her, shoulders lowered, voice steady but ragged. "Zariah bore us into a world that wasn't ready. But she didn't fear us. She feared what would seek us." He looked down at his hands. "She made me to be the prison, the last seal. My very body, my bloodline, isn't just moonfire. It's the cage." Zariah's pulse stilled. "For what?" Eric's closed his eyes. "For the one that came before the moon, before wolves. His name is Malrian, the Void Father, the first alpha before the shifting, before life. He is madness, hunger, the end of all. And now," Eric said softly, "he wakes." That night, Zariah sat alone in the circle of ash the cursed wolves had marked around her tent. She held the ancient scroll Zariah had left behind. Only now, after opening the gate, did the hidden ink bloom beneath her fingertips. The true prophecy revealed, one born of fire, one born of shadow. Together they may open the gate. But should they fall out of balance, the Father of the Void shall rise again, and the world will be unmade, unless the flame chooses to burn its reflection. Zariah's hand trembled. Burn its reflection. It didn't say kill, but it meant him. Her brother, the man who had walked through shadow to save her kingdom, her mate, her people, and had offered her nothing but peace. If she wanted to stop Malrian, she had to destroy Eric. She found Caelum beside the Black River, watching the sky. The stars above the eclipse realm were thinning, one by one. "Is it him?" he asked, not turning. "Yes," she whispered. He looked at her then, and when he saw her tears, his jaw clenched. "What does it want? To be free, and what must we do to stop it?" She couldn't speak, he already knew, and his voice, though still soft, fractured. Zariah collapsed to her knees before him. "I can't," she gasped. "He's my blood, Caelum, my brother. He never hurt me, he never wanted to." Caelum knelt, pulled her into his arms, and held her as she cried, until at last he said, "Then let me do it." She jerked back. "No. I'll take the sin. You carry too many already. You were made to heal. Let me be the sword." But she shook her head over and over. "No. If it must be done, it must be me." They shared a final meal under a half-lit sky. Zariah, Caelum, Eric's. No soldiers, no warlords, just 3 legacies on the edge of annihilation. They said little. They ate from simple wooden bowls, drank from silver goblets. Zariah watched her brother's eyes, watched how he kept looking up, as though sensing the Void Father's stirrings in the thinning stars. "Do you feel him?" she asked. "Yes," Eric said, "like a song just out of reach, like a hand pressed to the back of your neck, waiting for your head to drop. And if we don't act, he will break me, he will use me to cross. And when he does..." Eryx smiled sadly. The stars will bleed. Zariah stood, Caelum followed. Eryx remained seated. I'm ready, he said. Her heart cracked. Don't say that, I've lived 1,000 years in shadows. But this week, with you, with him, has been the only time I felt whole. He looked at Caelum. You were a better brother than I expected. Then to Zariah, and you were everything I dreamed. At dawn, she met him in the bone circle. Eryx knelt before her, palms open. Zariah's fire gathered to her hands, silver and sacred. She whispered the moonfire lament, the last rite of her line. He looked up, unafraid, and then she kissed his forehead. I'm sorry, she choked. He smiled. Don't be. She pressed her hand to his chest. The fire surged, and he shattered into starlight. No body, no ash, only silence. The sky tore open, the void screamed, but it was too late. Its vessel, its gate, was gone. Malian tried to claw through, but Zariah, Caelum, and every cursed wolf remaining held the gate shut, with fire, with fang, with love, and finally, the void collapsed, and the stars returned. 1 month later, peace, at last the eclipse gate is sealed. Zariah and Caelum returned to the capital as legends. The cursed wolves were welcomed into society, no longer feared, no longer hunted. Eryx's name was written in the sacred texts, not as a villain but as a keeper, the Prince of Eclipse, the Guardian of Flame. Zariah ruled beside Caelum not just as queen, but as mother. Their daughter was born beneath a full moon. Her eyes glowed with fire and starlight. They named her Erissa. Epilogue. Some stories end in fire, others begin there. But the truest love lives through both. 10 years later, the kingdom of fire and fang, it was spring in the eclipse veil. Not the dead gray of ancient days, but true spring. Bright gold blooms creeping up the edges of black hills, rivers, running clear again through cracks in the obsidian soil, and wolves running in the open, no longer cursed, no longer hiding. The veil was alive, because Zariah had kept her promise. Atop a newly built citadel where the old gate once stood, a silver balcony wrapped around a spire lit by ever-burning flame, and there, looking down at the kingdom she'd changed, stood the queen who had burned for it. Zariah. Her hair was longer now, streaked with soft threads of glowing moon blonde. Her crown had been reforged, not jagged gold, not bone, but woven silver branches, each tipped in sapphire flame. But her expression, even after 10 years, was the same, bright, wild, unbreakable. Behind her, a set of footsteps. She didn't turn, she didn't have to. Caelum's scent hit her before he touched her. Wolf, pine, steel, and something always uniquely his. He slid his arms around her waist and pulled her back into his chest. Still watching your kingdom like you're not the reason it even exists, he murmured against her ear. She smiled. Still watching me like I'm going to fall off the balcony. You nearly did once. I was pushed. Caelum chuckled low in his chest. You're still fire, he said, every part of you, and you still think you can tame it. I don't want to tame it, he said simply. I just want to touch it, and be the one it never burns. Zariah turned in his arms slowly, pressing her palms to his chest. He was broader now, his beard a little thicker, a few silver streaks in his temples, but no less powerful. No less her mate. You've never been burned by me, she whispered. I'd let you. She kissed him, soft, slow, with all the years between them folded into the space between heartbeats. And still, when they pulled away, they looked at each other like the bond was new. Because some love stories didn't fade. They deepened. Down in the citadel courtyard, a blur of movement darted between the training stones. A small figure, 12 years old, fierce and golden-eyed, flashed across the dirt in a graceful arc, silver flames licking at her boots. She leapt, and pinned her opponent, a much larger teenage wolf, to the ground with a grin. I win, she announced. Her trainer, a tall, eclipse-blooded warrior named Malus, groaned. You always win. She beamed, because I'm faster, and smarter, and born of them. She pointed up, to the tower. Malus raised a brow. And who are they, little queen? The girl stood tall. Zariah the Flame Queen, and Caelum the Iron Alpha, my mother and father. The other trainees muttered reverently, because everyone knew who she was. Erissa Volkov, daughter of prophecy, born of fire and eclipse, heir to a world reforged. Zariah's final journal that night with Caelum asleep beside her and the soft wind of the veil humming through the windows. Zariah opened the old leather-bound journal hidden in her private drawer. Inside were sketches of the gate before it opened, of Eric smiling at the last supper of the child she now raised who bore the fire without the pain. She dipped her pen in gold ink and wrote, "I was never meant to be queen. I was meant to be a contract bride, sold into politics, kept behind veils and chains. But love, real love, sets fire to plans. And fate, when dared, becomes something better than destiny. To my daughter, if you ever read this, know this. Your blood is not your limit. Your name is not your cage. You are not a flame because I was. You are fire because you choose to be." She closed the book and looked out at the veil. Stars gleamed above her, but none brighter than the ones in her own heart. At dawn, Caelum stood at the cliff's edge overlooking the world they'd saved. Zariah came up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. He kissed her hand. "She's growing up too fast. She's already better than both of us." He laughed. "That's terrifying." She leaned into his chest. "What if one day she finds the last gate?" she asked softly. "Then she'll have her mother's flame," he said, kissing her crown. "And her father's claws. She'll be unstoppable. She already is." A smaller voice piped up behind them. "You're talking about me again." They turned, and there she was, Orissa, barefoot, smiling, glowing with mischief and power. Zariah opened her arms. Her daughter ran into them. Caelum wrapped his arms around both of them. And for one perfect moment, there were no thrones, no curses, no prophecies, only family, only love, only fire. The end. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Kindly comment below if you loved it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more amazing content. Drop a comment with your favorite moment, and I'll see you in the next one.